Hi, everybody. My name is Gary Gomes. I'd like to welcome you to the Vedic astrology um, analysis for the coming week of the last full day in July, July 31st, and the first week of August. So, um, the first thing I'd like to tell you is I do actually do charts. I teach astrology. I also have a large background in astrology, which you can see on my Facebook pages or my LinkedIn pages, and you can get a glimpse of my background there. And I'm also working with Saptarishi Astrology right now as a volunteer, and I'm also working on doing several collaborative shows with astrologers in the upcoming few months. Uh, we're expecting to have Jean Karazian on again. We're expecting to have Lolita Donatella Ribak on again. Um, Paul Von Manley has given me a sign that he'd be willing to show up in October. We'll see uh, how that happens. I have a very interesting astrologer from Japan. I'm, I'm planning to have on this page over the next few weeks. So we're actually moving forward. Also, I'll probably be doing an interview with Sinead Devi from Turkey, and that'll be posted to Saptarishi Astrology, but also to this page. So we're going to be doing a lot of collaborative work over the next month or so, and also giving you some um, ideas on how to correct your situations. I think one of the things that's fascinating to me is how much this field has exploded over the past 30 years. Astrology, in particular, became very popular during the pandemic and in the years preceding that. And there were a lot of new astrologers on the scene. You know, so I think that that's a hopeful sign. I think that that's also a sign we have a lot of quote unquote novice astrologers, but the learning resources have gotten better. So I really don't have an opinion as to whether or not those astrologers um, are as good as old timers or whether the old timers have just like this vast store of wisdom we can share with you. Uh, but I think one of the exciting things right now is that we're at a period of time in which there's a lot of research going on in astrology, both historical, and that's been going on since the 80s and 90s, and also in terms of actual statistical research. So I think those two things working together can help us improve ourselves as professionals and can help us provide better information to you as consumers of astrology, both in formats like this and in individual readings and instruction. So without further ado, I'll get to the presentation. There is going to be another Saptarishi astrology event in September 16th to 17th. And I think you'll find that really interesting. It's on retrogrades. Retrograde planets are essentially planets that appear to be moving backwards through the sky um, from the Earth. So no planet ever moves completely backwards, but there is a school of thought that retrogrades tend to assume more power or more vitality when they're retrograde because it's like they're stopped in motion and slowing down compared to the Earth. Um, Mercury retrograde is probably the best known retrograde because it's number one, fairly common, and number two, is blamed for all kinds of communication snafus that we experience. And it's not really that negative placement, especially in the birth chart. And it's really not that negative in terms of purchases, especially in an economy in which we can actually um, exchange things or trade things or go backwards. So I'm going to stop this part and we're going to analyze the birth chart that's showing up right now. This is Saturday, July 29th. That's my phone chiming in. That's Saturday, July 29th at approximately 12:30 p.m. A little bit later than I normally do this, but better late than never. Some people might say better never than late, but they're not my friends anyway. So, all right, so let's go over here. And one of the things I'm going to do it for a third time because I still don't trust Zoom to really show the screen. Okay, it's showing on my screen that it's showing, and it's showing on your screen that's showing. Now, for those of you who know me, I talk mostly about politics. Um, I haven't spoken about religion, so I haven't. My, my mother gave us an axiom: two things we should never talk about: politics or religion. And here I am talking about politics. So at least I've avoided religion. I think by and large, for some people, politics is religion, and what I mean by that is they become dogmatized. They become um, very narrow focused. And I think that worries me from the perspective that, but I don't think it's an unusual phenomenon. I think we've just become more fixed in our perspectives because we're talking with each other more, but we're talking with people we prefer to talk to online. So that kind of reinforces our biases, and doesn't let a lot of new thinking in. So, and I blame the media in large part for that. I think the media has been more polarizing than almost any institution uh, that I've seen over the past few years. And this has been particularly true since 2000. It was true in the 1990s, definitely, but it's become truer since around 2015, 2016, um, in which, um, and again, this isn't a new phenomenon. It didn't happen overnight, but basically since the advent of a variety of uh, right-wing and left-leaning networks in the 1990s. In the 1990s, you had fewer left-leaning organizations, but uh, you had PBS and you had, let's say, um, other attempts at left-leaning networks. And MSNBC is probably the strongest example I can think of, but CNN has become increasingly left-leaning. And the mainstream media actually has become increasingly um, left-leaning. On the other side, you have Fox, which for some people manifests as the devil itself, and smaller networks um, that I've never watched or like new or only watch infrequently like Newsmax. and you have a whole bunch of independent media coming up right now, which I think is a healthy phenomenon because at least they can provide a less beholden allegiance to advertisers or to one political party or the other. So I'm not going to just say that those individuals, but a lot of them are on YouTube, and a lot of them are um, are uh, moderate to, I would say, pretty much skeptical commentary. So, but getting back to this point is one of the things that I noticed when I first looked up this chart was how many planets are located in Leo. Now that's the sign connected, like Aries, is connected with the government and is connected with um, people who sit in power. So again, one of the things that I've encouraged people to look at is, and it's going to get really tough about, I say about uh, 20 days from now because the sun will be in this combination. Will Mercury be there? Yep. Will Venus be there? Probably. Or it'll be back in Cancer for a little while. And, but about 20 days from now, so Venus will be in Cancer, so Venus will be outside of this. But you will also have um, combinations which will make government more, um, number one, embarrassed, but more dictatorial, if that makes sense. As I've said to you often enough before, Mercury Mars combinations are lawyer combinations. Venus moving retrograde tends to give a little bit of a backsliding of the law. And we had the case over the past week of Hunter Biden's plea deal not being accepted. So that was basically um, a legal defeat for him. And I think also you'll see a lot of cases getting delayed or a lot of um, reach, a lot of regurgitating of things from the past over the next few weeks. In terms of the economy, Saturn is aspecting this cluster right here. And I think in terms of the economy, you'll see, again, surface wise, the economy seems pretty good. There are trends, however, especially in September, which will make it turn rather difficult. And I've been predicting this for months, and you will see a slowdown in growth. There was news that I ran across last night that Germany, even though unemployment is low, is in imminent danger of a recession starting. Now, that's the economic powerhouse in Europe. And it's mainly because of support from, it's mainly because of energy costs affecting Europe, but it's also because of weak demand for German manufactured goods, which is strongest in China. So we have what are essentially the second and fourth largest economies in the world showing signs of weakness. Okay, so the United States is the largest economy in the world. I'm not saying that out of some kind of misplaced patriotism. It's just factually true. China is the second largest, and Germany is up there with Japan for being either the third or the fourth largest economy in the world. And so if these two tend to show some signs of unsteadiness, it can't help but hurt the rest of the world. And The other problem we run into, though, is you're going to get a lot of lying about it. Okay, you're going to get a lot of people putting on smiles and saying this is not happening. We're doing okay. That one thing that was mentioned in the German report, which I saw on a neutral business news service, Bloomberg, was that people are not participating as much in the German labor force. And that's also true in the United States. So the unemployment rates are down here, but we don't have as much participation here. So the way unemployment rates work is you count as your base the number of people who are actively looking for work and the number of people who can't find work. So that's your denominator, and your numerator is the number of people who are not employed. So that's the unemployment rate. The labor participation rate is part of an entire eligible workforce. So those are people who are actively looking for work versus those who might be available for work. And that rate has been down since the pandemic. It's starting to increase a little bit, but it's still down. And I think there's going to be, we're seeing increasing gas prices in the United States. Europe and the rest of the world has seen really massive hikes in gasoline prices. But again, that is an inflation driver. That's a major inflation driver. So the cost of energy is always considered to be problematic. Now, I'm not all doom and gloom. I think that this is not going to be a very deep um, downturn. I think this is going to be something which is going to affect consumer purchases and also unemployment rates, but relatively softly. Um, and I don't think that this is quite as catastrophic, but the inflation rate will continue to increase. That is problematic. And we also have most of these planets are aspected by Jupiter. So the messaging, the wisdom we're getting right now is affected by Rahu, by everything's fine, don't worry about it, everything's kind of covered up. This is also true in legal matters. Saturn's aspecting Jupiter. It's making things a little bit too tightly controlled for my taste. And when I say tightly controlled, I mean they're being it's not that people are out and out lying, it's the data is being represented. Data can be represented in different ways to either make you happy or sad. Okay. And I think the data is being manipulated to make people feel calm and make them feel like everything's under control. And it isn't. So I'm not so Saturn's aspecting Mars, so we're wanting everything to be perfect. Saturn's aspecting Mercury, so payments are going to be slow. Saturn's aspecting Venus, there'll be a little bit of now that will change within about 4 days. Okay, so Venus will go back into um, Cancer, but there is also what I call a shadow aspect of Saturn. So this I learned years ago. Saturn will still continue to influence. It's influencing the sun right now, and it's also influencing. Um, it'll also influence Venus for the next few months. It'll essentially influence any planet which is in let's see now, Aries primarily, but Pisces secondarily. Um, Leo primarily, but Cancer secondarily, and Scorpio primarily, but Libra secondarily. So Saturn's having is the dominant influence in this particular chart. Jupiter's doing some nice things for Venus, Mercury, and Mars. You know, that aspect is considered to be good. The Rahu conjunction doesn't mean anything really. Rahu is essentially um, a shadowy planet, tries to take things or tries to manipulate things, but it's really not affecting Jupiter's aspect. And Jupiter's aspecting Venus, Mercury, and Mars, and also um, Libra, and also um, Sagittarius. So this will give a certain amount of optimism over the next few months, and it'll save us from a total collapse, you know, basically. And Jupiter's going to stay in the sun really until next April or May. So I don't think a lot of people have a lot to worry about. But again, I don't expect the economic picture to get it. I do expect a recession in the fall. I do expect um, inflation to stay stubborn because it's really not um, people buying too much. It's really more the lack of an available resource and also changes in policies which are making that resource um, more and more expensive. And also, obviously, we have a war going on between Ukraine and Russia, which is going to affect gasoline prices. And Saudi Arabia is also in kind of a mess politically as well. So I think one of the things we're looking at is look again for more misrepresentation in terms of people who are people you would normally trust. Let's put it that way. So people who are guys like um, um, religious leaders, spiritual leaders. You'll also see some more unorthodox ideas gaining acceptance. I mean, I think one of the things that's got me tickled is a lot of the coverage that's showing up on UFOs right now. And the reason it's got me tickled is because, um, and they're called unidentified aerial phenomena now, I think. Um, and UAPs or UAFs, I can't remember what the acronym is, but and I mean, I'm not for those of you out there who are like firm believers in UFOs. I'm not saying they 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 shouldn't have been having this discussion for years. But to me, it strikes me as a little bit of a distraction, to be honest. We also have a lot of um, misinformation about, or I only use the term misinformation, uh, a lot of confusion because I dislike it. I really dislike the term um, because it's either information is information. It's either good or bad information. It's either factual or it isn't. Misinformation strikes me as something that you can look at and say, "Oh, we don't want to talk about that. That's misinformation. Let's stop talking about it." So it's essentially a way of saying the other people are lying, but it's a polite way of saying it. And so we have this Jupiter Rahu. So this is exposing a lot of things that have been covered up for a while, but it's still not being generally accepted um, by by the population. I think you'll see a shift in December And this is true about legal matters. This is true about the governments, about a lot of governments in the world. We're still experiencing massive communications and problems in terms of, so Germany is encountering some fires, from what I understand. Um, Europe's Spain is encountering some fires. France is being a bit torn up, and so a lot of Europe is um, being subject to this Venus, Mercury, Mars conjunction, and this Jupiter Rahu, which people are sort of, and this Saturn in Aquarius transit, which is making people retrench. So even if they get information which is validated by major news sources, like let's say the New York Times, conventional news sources, they're still sticking by their guns and saying, "Well, that's not true. You know, it's a lie." And the same is true, like I said, from both sides of the camp. So even if the independent media are coming out and saying, "Well, you know, you lied about this," I'm going to stop the share because I didn't like what happened there. Okay, so we're back on again. So even if independent media sources are coming out and saying, "Well, that's true, but this is always true," people are still kind of stuck in these silos. Hopefully, that'll change when Saturn goes direct again, and you'll see a shift. But I don't see, or this isn't a really good chart for communication or commerce. So again, we do have a certain thing called momentum that builds up in an economy. And when I say momentum, that means you're going to keep on spending because it's a habit. But I also think, and also it's summertime, so people tend to spend more in the summertime. But this Mars over here, a lot of problems in relationship life, a lot of problems with arguments, a lot of problems with overspending. So I think that's something to be cautious about over the next few months. And this is true not only of people, but of governments. Okay. If we have all this activity in Leo, we can expect to see fires, definitely. Sun and Mars are both influenced by Saturn, some destructive forces, some destruction of religious institutions and governmental institutions, some people who are otherwise have good reputations being um, subject to scandal, even some potential separations and breakups of marriages. So this is going to be a tough couple of months for financial transactions. So in terms of investing or reconsidering direction in finances, between now and through around September 2nd, I would encourage people to take that particular route. In September, as I said before, Jupiter goes retrograde, so we'll have this overlap of retrograding planets, but the two most important ones are usually Jupiter and Saturn. And like I said, Venus retrogrades really don't last that long. It's usually a feeling you have to go back. You'll go back and get a little bit nostalgic for certain things, but you'll also go back and say, "Geez, I really enjoyed that particular thing I did back in 19, whatever year it was, or 2012, and let's do that again." But just in general, a lot of dangers to people in power, a lot of scandals connected with people in power. And this will just continue really, I think, pretty much and result in some people losing power between now and April, and maybe even more economic discord and scandals connected with spiritual institutions after April of 2024. So let's go over to your individual charts. So let's see now. Where are we? All right. So Aries chart hasn't changed that much since last week, but although we have seen certain planets move into the fifth house in this chart. So Mercury's moved into the fifth house, so that should make it a little bit easier for you to achieve your desires for this chart. But Venus moving backwards makes it a little bit easier for relationship partners to decide they're not really happy with their life, and there'll be some tension in relationships over the next month or so, really until around September 2nd. And then Venus will go back into a more regular pattern. But I'd be careful about fights or arguments or discussions with relationship partners. Also be careful about cars because Venus retrograde, I've tended to notice, gives car problems. So just be careful about that. And let's see now. Mercury as the Lord of the sixth house, and the third house will make children into enemies to a certain extent, or people you work for into enemies, or people who work for you into enemies to a certain extent. And Moon in the eighth, this is interesting because it'll give more unseen household expenses. Saturn's aspecting the moon directly, no ambiguity about that. And that'll make it tougher for you to make progress in terms of where you want to go in your life. It won't last very long. It'll be gone really by Monday, but you'll feel it um, at least right now. For Taurus, so again, good for gains, but again, slow gains, and be very careful and very conservative. Investing right now is not really, I wouldn't recommend high risk investments right now at all. So things like Bitcoin, which I consider high risk, pharmaceuticals are still a good bet, but things like Bitcoin, and I'm not an investment advisor, so don't say this is investment advice, but risky investments, anything that's like really, really new or novel, unless it's some kind of tracking device or something like that, or some kind of monitoring device, electronics monitoring devices, I would stay away from. Okay. Um, that's just my opinion. It's not investment advice. Okay, so I have to be careful about that because I'm not an investment advisor, and this cannot be construed or taken as investment advice. Taurus has Venus in the fourth house, so there's a lot of emotional weight there, a lot of problems with relationships, a lot of feelings that relationship partners are lying or not telling the entire truth or manipulating people. And also from this chart, there's some conflict on the home front, some disappointment on the home front. There will be a lot of activity connected with education, though, and also this is relatively lucky for children and also somewhat lucky for overcoming enemies because enemies will recede into the background. Seventh house has moon in it, and I'm going to get out on this because I saw that flicker and I'm just not really sure that things are being seen. So I apologize for doing that. I'm going to check one more thing. Okay, so the recording is still going on. So at least for this chart, domestically kind of a difficult month. So this is May 15th to June 15th, uh, not April 23rd to May 23rd, as we have in Western astrology. And let's see now, Saturn, a lot of work effort, a lot of work not really appreciated by spouse. Rahu and Jupiter, heavy expenditure patterns are indicated for this particular sign. For Gemini, Gemini has Mercury and Mars located in the third house, along with Venus, some difficulties connected with siblings, obviously, and also um, siblings or relationship partners may not be being entirely honest with you at this particular point in time. Um, and there'll also be some problems with other family members like mother um, and even children because of this combination. So family members will want a lot of your attention. That's been ongoing. There's some worry about family members, obviously, because second house Lord is in Cancer and indicates some struggle. So some medical or psychological issues with family members. Seventh house Lord is placed in the 11th house, so it should give the potential for good financial gains. Although for those of you who are in long-term relationships, there should be some caution exhibited in terms of trusting relationship partners, some potential for love affairs or deceit with this combination. This should be taken with a grain of salt because Saturn aspecting Jupiter won't make a person unfaithful, but it can give a lot of opportunities for bad judgment in relationships. For Cancer, Cancer has the sun in the first house as Lord of the second, so there's a lot of focus on money and financial growth. That's being pushed back because of Venus leaving this house. But Mercury is building up some strength. You should see some financial progress this month, slow but sure. And Mars in Leo actually gives good potential strength for relationships and for financial gains. K2's in the third house, a lot of courage for the sign. Moon is debilitated in the fourth house, so again, there's some moodiness for Leo, sun, rising, or moons. And Saturn's in the seventh house. Again, relationship life will seem predictable, but a little bit stressful for this particular sign. And Rahu and Jupiter in the ninth house is generally considered to be a good placement for this sign. But I think the problem with this is that it does good things as the Lord of a trine in a trine along with Rahu. That's considered to be very lucky. But also, it's kind of the luck is a little bit overhyped or a little bit over anticipated, and there'll be some blocks or some delays. Sun's in the 12th house, so this sign won't feel really confident for about another 2 to 3 weeks or so. For Virgo, Virgo has no planets in the seventh house. Lord of the seventh house, Jupiter and Rahu, so that will give some difficulties in relationships or some difficulties in bringing projects together because relationship partners will be either unavailable or shut off. For the moon is in the third house, so desires will be changeable. There'll be some problems with communication with that placement as well, although help from friends is indicated. Saturn's in the sixth house gives the sign a lot of determination and drive. Aspecting Jupiter, there won't be a lot of free money coming in. There won't be a lot of investment money coming in, let's say, or else you'll hear that you're getting money, but you won't get it for a long time. And that'll be fine. You'll get it by mid August at the latest. For career life for this sign, the Lord of the first house and the Lord of the 10th house are both in the 12th house, and that does tend to delay some progress in career matters. Maybe not for so long. I think you'll start to see career life start to really come alive within about a month's time, but right now it's a little bit tough. For Libra, Libra has Rahu and Jupiter in the 7th house, so there's this strong feeling you can have better relationships or wiser relationships or smarter relationships. Saturn's aspecting Jupiter, and that judgment delays it or blocks it or obstructs it. So it sort of makes a person feel like they're a little bit imprisoned, but not in a really serious way. Saturn's good in the 5th house for this chart. It makes the person recap their past, go over the mistakes they've made, and try to figure out how to avoid making those mistakes again, especially in health and relationship matters. Moon's in the 2nd house, so there should be some financial growth for the sign, and that's good because the sun's in this chart, in this house, so it's good for career options for this planet as well, especially part-time career options with all these planets located in the house. So that looks very good. But you will have friends essentially lying to you or misrepresenting things to you, or acquaintances doing that. Saturn aspects this combination, so there will be limitations on gains on financial growth within for this particular sign. Again, not a good time to shift relationships for Libra, but there will be a lot of attraction to other people. I've noticed that through observation through the years. For Scorpio, Scorpio has Moon in the 1st house. That's actually not a bad placement. The 9th Lord is in the 1st house, and Lord of the 10th is in the 9th house. So good for career life for this particular planet. Not good for financial gains, but good for career life, and some financial gains will be realized. Saturn is in the 4th house, so people with this chart combination will have a lot of ability to lead and command. And Rahu and Jupiter are in the 6th house, so there should be some caution about getting medical advice or getting guidance from people. So mull it over. Don't make any major decisions, especially financial or relationship decisions, until early September. For Sagittarius, Sagittarius has Jupiter and Rahu in the 5th. Again, this is a good combination. It's often viewed as being negative, but it's really a good combination. So it will give a great deal of success, a great deal of forward movement. It will certainly give a lot of greed to this sign, and also there'll be a lot of domestic unrest because of this, or unrest at home. Saturn's in the 3rd house is great for achieving goals through determination. Sun's is in the 8th house, so some confidence will be lacking for the sign. But career life actually looks pretty good for this sign. And again, don't trust your friends. Just be a little bit wary of them. They're not really that well put together this month. It won't be really until really the beginning of next year. For Capricorn, Capricorn has Saturn in the 2nd house and Jupiter in the 4th, which is a good combination for increased status and financial gain. Sun's in the 6th, so there'll be Sun's in the 7th house, excuse me. And we have that cluster of planets in the 8th house, which again does indicate some financial gains from investments. K2's in the 9th, unexpected financial gains, and finally Moon in the 11th. worry about holding on to money. So Capricorn looks actually fairly decent. But again, any gains made will be slow gains. For Aquarius, Aquarius has that soft yoga, SASA, in the first house. It makes this sign commanding. Uh, Unorthodox people will start to gain popularity. So that's we can see that with some of the presidential candidates right now. Names will not be spoken. And Saturn is aspecting Jupiter, trying to, this sign is kind of delights in challenging the establishment. A lot of possibilities for relationships for this sign. But again, just be a little careful because Mars over here, the sign you're attracted to or the person you're attracted to sexually may not be the best match for you. And um, so again, get to know a person, but also um, wait before you make any decisions. And I would wait at least 4 months before I made any long-term commitments to anybody that I met uh, during this period. And if you're an Aquarius rising sun or Jupiter's in the third, so there's a lot of ambition, a lot of drive for learning. Sun's in the sixth, so some confidence issues show up. Good for business partnerships, so that Venus, Mars, Mercury combination in the seventh house, but you'll have to check your business partner's backgrounds out very, very carefully. And Moon is in the 10th house, so this could indicate worry about change in career or instability in career. For Pisces, that won't last long, but for Aquarius. For Pisces, Rahu and Jupiter in the second house, so a lot of focus on money and financial growth. Venus, Mercury, and Mars are in the sixth house. That gives some enemies connect from siblings, from family members, um, from from family members, from spouse, for that matter. So you seem to have enemies on all sides. Good for spiritual practice, though, and engage in spiritual practice is much better right now. Moon's in the ninth. That's actually a good placement. So that makes the sun a lot wiser, a lot more circumspect about what it invests in or invests its time in. And finally, Pisces has Saturn in the 12th house. So this will be a lot of unexpected or forced expenditures for this sign. So that's it for this week for the signs. I'd like to remind you to subscribe, um, like, and comment. If you'd like to appear on the show, I'm not done yet, but if you'd like to appear on the show, please let me know. I'm more than open to that. And let's look at the sky and see where we expect major problems. I may not have as much time to do this as I normally do. I may have enough though. All right, so this is good Lord. All right, this is not working that much. So, all right, let me see. Can't really blow it up. So I'm gonna creep you out and get close to the screen. So Hawaii again, Jupiter Rahu, some political scandal in Hawaii connected with the government. I'm not sure what. Um, Also, Sun in Cancer can give some volcanic activity, but that's not as prominent here. Definitely some scandal in government in Alaska. Some Earth problems in Washington, Oregon, and California. Some what I would call Earth-based problems. Maybe even some financial misery in that part of in that part of the state. Also, there'll be a lot of coverage about now political lies in roughly in the area between Idaho all the way down to roughly into Denver, Colorado, and maybe expanding, maybe even some arguments or some shooting or fighting in California. Some potential for earthquakes, unfortunately. For the rest of the country, Mars and Sun and Rahu are encompassing the rest of the country, with most of the dramatic stuff, most of the lying, most of the conflict will come out of Washington, D.C., a little bit up through New York, and a little bit of it down through Virginia, down into Cuba, down into Colombia, Venezuela, Peru, a little bit of Chile, and Canada. So especially around the the country's capital and Toronto. For there's a Jupiter line being joined by an ascending sun line in the Amazon basin and down through Argentina, Bolivia, and Paraguay and Uruguay. And I think one of the things you're going to see is disruptions in government in those countries, uh, domestic problems. And Brazil is getting clobbered again. So Brazil is trying to do new trades or trying to pull its way out of economic problems, but it can't. So this will be very frustrating for it, and you will see the government lying about it again as well. For Iceland and the Azores, there's a Mars line coming through there, so people should be very careful about some kinds of natural catastrophes like volcanoes or earthquakes, and also about accidental um, um, natural disasters. England has nothing covering it. Spain has nothing covering it. The closest planetary lines, though, to Western Europe are Rahu and Mars. So this tends to indicate this entire bandwidth right here, all the way through Northern Africa, all to Ethiopia and Eritrea, um, and even into Saudi Arabia will be conflict prone. So you'll see a lot of protesting in France, a lot of um, anxiety in Germany, and a lot of um, scandal, possibly in Eastern Europe, possibly in the Ukraine, and possibly in um, Poland and Finland, and also in South Africa and Rhodesia. Um, there's a Venus, Mercury, Mars line over here in Russia. Um, so it, and also a Jupiter line going through Saudi Arabia. So I think one of the things that I see this as, this is roughly close to the Ukraine border. Um, and so this indicates to me that number one, the Saudis are going through their particular set of problems right now, in terms of scandals, in terms of economic issues. But I think you will see this particular combination. You will see some disruption and some misrepresentation, maybe even some um, starvation um, in this part of the world over here, Iran, Iraq. Uh, the other thing to keep in mind over here is we have this Jupiter line crossing over Mars, which is close to Moscow. So I would expect to see more rather than fewer terrorist attacks in Moscow over the next week or so. Um, or armed drone flights. I can use words other than what Russia used to describe it. Um, there's a big moon line going over India, which is interesting to me. Moon is uh, extremely, extremely um, and I lost my train of thought there for a second. And there could be some conflict in India as well because of the Mars Moon aspect. So this would be in Western India, um, and it's hemmed in between. And the thing I noticed is that Afghanistan and Pakistan are hemmed in between two relatively negative planets. That is the debilitated Moon and Mars. So again, that part of the world is going to have to look out for violence. Um, Rahu's going over Cambodia, Indonesia, and Malaysia, and also close to Vietnam. So um, those countries, which we once called Southeast Asia, are thriving economies right now, but there will be some scandals and some inability inability to get what we want from those places for a little while. Um, the other planetary placements I like to draw your attention to are Rahu affecting China and Russia. So there'll be some anxiety or tension between China and Russia about um, ownership of space. Jupiter's running through eastern China and also through eastern Russia. And it's also going through Western Australia and roughly eastern Indonesia. And and also Borneo, and those combinations tend to be a little bit difficult for people um, to maintain. I'm trying to think of what I was going to say. It's going to be difficult to maintain order in those countries, especially with those lines running the way they are. And you also see a Venus, this cluster of planets, Venus, Saturn, Mars, all hitting New Guinea, not New Guinea, yeah, that's Borneo, my apology, that's New Guinea, and all through Australia. So Australia is going to be in some kind of financial crisis over the next few weeks, and there will be anxiety connected with that, and Japan and New Zealand. So that's it for this week. Thank you very much for watching. I love you all. Thank you for paying attention, and thank you for tuning in every week. I love you all. God bless you and take care of yourselves. Okay. Thank you very much. And remember, make your own life. Bye.